Hello, everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. As you can see, got a special guest with us here today. He's a writer for the OBR, and you can find him on Twitter at Jake_Burns18. And also be sure to go check out, he does really good film breakdowns at the Orange and Brown Report YouTube channel, as well as a lot of other stuff they got going on over there. So, Jake, thanks for joining me.
Hey, yeah, it's my pleasure. Sorry it took a little bit here, but happy to be here, happy to be on.
No, yeah, it's fine. I appreciate it. So wanted to start off here. I want to ask about Baker Mayfield because that, and I know quickly talking to you before, I kind of told you that's how I found you, was through doing these film breakdowns. And assuming the Browns don't re-sign Baker this offseason, which I think is likely they're not going to, it really puts an emphasis on this season as this is the prove it year as far as what number is he going to get on that contract and how much are they going to pay him. My question is, do you think that offensively, now that they have everything set, they're keeping everybody's back, same system, do you think they're really going to open it up for him to kind of test him to see what his limits are?
Yeah, good question. I think they, excuse me, I think they will. I think they already did. They definitely started to last year. Without a doubt, think that there was an emphasis on putting more in his hands as time wore on. I don't know if the Kevin Stefanski could give you that percentage, maybe necessarily, but there was without a doubt, in my opinion, an emphasis as the year wore on that we have to see what we have in Baker, and we have to put him under stressful situations to sort of prove to ourselves whether we have the guy or we don't have the guy, if that makes sense. And I think with that territory brought some good out of Baker. I think that there were some elements of really good play. And then there were times where it just kind of wasn't good enough. And I'm sure Baker would admit the same thing there. So I think there's obviously an emphasis to continue to see Baker prove that he is worth the money that quarterbacks on these second contracts are getting. But as Baker alluded to today in minicamp, he's not worried about it. There's no pressure. He already knows, he bets on himself, that kind of stuff. And I really do believe that from him. So they'll continue to see. I think the best version of their offense toward the end of the year was when more was in his hands. So I think there will be an emphasis on that for him, and how he responds to that challenge will ultimately decide how much money he makes and how far the Browns go, really.
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting. Last season, the Browns ran 11 personnel 44% of the time, and then 12 personnel, which I think a lot of people were really expecting with the two tight end sets, 26% of the time. So I think when you look at as far as next step, are you expecting that number of the 44% with 11 personnel to go way up? Do you think they're going to even go with four receivers? What do you think as far as the passing game? How do you think that's going to evolve?
Good question again. I think there's been an emphasis from Stefanski all offseason to improve themselves, take different strides and in different departments. He hasn't really given anything specific. Really, he hasn't said exactly what he's looking at, but it doesn't take a whole bunch to figure out that he's probably talking about evolving from a personnel standpoint. I don't know how crazy they get from the 44%. They could climb near 50% because at the heart of it is still a guy who still wants to be a tight end based wide zone
Mhm.
offense. I don't think they're just going to abandon that in one off season and go full on Rams 11 personnel heavy, but they definitely have three receivers behind their first two who are more than capable, and Rashard Higgins, Kadero Hodge, Donovan Peoples-Jones, that it's sometimes arguable that maybe they should put those guys on the field a little bit more, and even as we know, Anthony Schwartz too, the rookie. So there's going to be a challenge to see who's on the field the most. A game by game will dictate. The thing that I like a lot is, they can go week by week and look at sort of every team they play, figure out what they're not good at, and expose it, because they can run the football well from heavy personnel. Or if they play a team who, take for example Pittsburgh, who does not have great cornerback depth, they can put more 11 personnel on the field when they need to and expose that. So they got to continue to do what they're best at. They got to find that groove again. Every year is different in terms of figuring out what you're best at. But just as far as flexibility week to week, I think it's pretty is pretty unique for them, and I'm really excited to see how they figure that out.
Yeah, so along these same lines, I thought it was interesting when Kevin Stefanski was hired, he really took a hands-on approach with the offense, deciding to call plays as well as take on the head coach role. And I don't know about you, but I know me and some other Browns fans were really concerned about that just because we've seen that before and it's failed. And I think it's probably not fair of us to loop in Stefanski, but I mean, when you have year after year of what we've had, I think it's just natural. But I think when you look at this season, as far as what we've seen in mini camps and stuff, it seems like Stefanski's just kind of been almost roaming around. Like he's just kind of been there. And Alex Van Pelt's really taken control of the offense so far. I mean, it is just, it's simple stuff right now. It's nothing big. But do you think Kevin Stefanski could potentially give a little bit more to AVP and take a little bit of a hands-off approach?
It's possible. I think that there was a real hard consideration of that last year. And that was a lot to hear Kevin think about doing because, he was obviously hired because they like the system for him and Baker and everybody involved. And for him to really consider, we're taking this from what we know publicly. We don't know everything that they're, especially what Kevin, how serious Kevin really is taking it. But it seemed like he was weighing it pretty heavily, this idea of letting AVP come in and take over. And AVP's only called plays really one time in his career. I think way back in 2009 in Buffalo, he got an opportunity because the offensive coordinator quit in the preseason. A big level of dissension between the head coach. I think it was Dick Duran there in Buffalo at the time. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't had a ton of experience. But that doesn't mean AVP can't do it. He's a very well-regarded coach. We all know his connection to Aaron Rodgers, how much Aaron Rodgers loved him, how well he did in Cincinnati, and how much they didn't want to see him go. He's a smart dude. He obviously proved he can handle the role when he was given the opportunity in the wild card game. I think he's going to be very hands-on. And I mean, it depends on what Alex Van Pelt's goal is in his career. Some guys are just, I think Pete Carmichael in New Orleans, they're just happy with being an assistant. That's just, you get a family, you get comfortable, you get your kid. They don't necessarily want to push for head coaching jobs. It's a thing. Like some guys just aren't meant to be head coaches or don't want to be head coaches. So I think there could be some of that with Van Pelt. I'm speaking pure conjecture here, but that could be the case. Or if he wants to be the guy, I'm sure Stefanski sits down with all of his assistants and says, "Here's how we get from A to B in your career. Here's how you get to becoming a head coach someday. Or if you want to call plays, here's how you get there." So the next logical step for Alex Van Pelt is truly getting an offense, truly getting to call stuff. I would not be surprised if Stefanski came out one day this summer and said, "Yeah, I'm going to let him call plays." I think that he has such a working relationship with everybody on his staff. I'm sure there would be great collaboration there. I think the odds are still pretty heavy. Kevin keeps it for a while because Kevin's still young, and you can't forget Kevin didn't have a long run as an offensive coordinator. He really only got it for a year and some change. When John DeFilippo was fired at the end of 2018, he got that role at the end of 2018 before really taking on the reins in 2019. So he's only really had two years and some change of calling an offense himself. So he could, from his standpoint, really still want to do it, because he's good at it and it's his scheme and it's his job on the line ultimately, no matter what happens. So the good thing here is this: they're both good at it. It feels like good enough. I mean, I think we know Kevin's good enough, and we truly think Van Pelt can handle it. So I think even if he does end up naming Van Pelt the play caller, I would have no issues with that decision whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's something that was such a big storyline last season with everything being so new, but it seems like this offseason I haven't really heard a whole lot about that, but I do think that is something to potentially pay attention to as far as the future. So shifting to the future, I want to talk a little bit about some news we heard in the last few days that Denzel Ward and his agent, as well as Nick Chubb and his agent, have both been in contact about being extended. With Denzel Ward and his injury history, and given the fact he was the first round pick, fourth overall, he has that 5th-year option. Do you think the Browns, with Denzel specifically, do you think they're kind of hesitant to really pull the trigger there, especially given the fact that they can wait, they have that option?
I don't know that there should be hesitancy. I think he's very good, and I don't really see a big issue with giving him an extension. I know people will point to some things in his career so far, but to me they've been just sort of little nagging injuries. He's never broken an ankle, he's never torn a ligament, he's never had anything crazy happen. It's just soft tissue stuff. And really, so to me, this is just me speaking here, but like soft tissue stuff is sometimes injury related. Like we know Denzel works hard, so it's not a work hard issue. It's just sometimes soft tissue injuries just happen and there's nothing you can do. And he dealt with concussions his first year, but has seemed to have come away from them, understanding when to get away from them. Last year was a little bit of COVID that he dealt with too. So those things clearly are parts of his game that are going to go away. I mean, in terms of concussions, he's getting smarter. Like I said, the COVID stuff, granted, we saw all the news come out today with that, but for the most part, he should be okay there. So it's like, you're then at that point just running the risk of, well, are we scared of soft tissue injuries? And it's like, I think guys come out of soft tissue injuries as they get older. He's only 24 still. He still has room to get stronger. He still has room to grow as a person, into his body, all of that stuff. So I just think if you're worried about injuries with Denzel, you're kind of just being panicked to be panicked. I think he's going to be fine. And I think that he's a very good corner who's trying to push toward elite. He's not there yet by any stretch, but he's trying to get there. So to me, it's a no-brainer to bring him back. I don't think he's going to set the cornerback market by any means, but there's a deal to be had there that's good for both sides. He mentioned too, he's a Cleveland guy. He's only known the state of Ohio for football. He wants to be here, and Denzel Wards don't just grow on trees every draft. Like you've got to find that guy, and they did. So yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. Less tougher decision than Nick Chubb, I would say, and that's saying something because I love Nick.
Yeah. So I do think it is a little bit different with Denzel and Nick, just given the positions, and obviously that's the one thing everybody talks about is, running backs aren't worth it because they grow on trees. I don't think so. I really don't. Nick Chubbs do not grow on trees. And I think especially given the fact that, Saquon Barkley was taken so high in the exact same draft, and one guy is putting up career numbers and the other guy is, sitting on the bench. And obviously Saquon's a very talented running back. I'm not saying he's not, but I think when it comes to Nick Chubb long term, do you think, given the fact that Kareem Hunt is here and that can kind of almost shift some of the load and keep keep Nick a little bit fresher, do you think that helps them as far as decision making on to keep him long term, that they have that option to also be able to substitute him in and out and give him that almost extra legs, I guess you could say?
100%. I mean, it should. There's a lot of things that factor into Nick, where if Nick was getting if he was getting Derrick Henry type carries, or even Dalvin Cook to an extent when Dalvin's healthy, then you do have to really think about it, right? Like in my opinion, you really have to say this is a tougher decision because we do know miles have been logged. He had a 2019 season. I mean, his rookie season, he only got really, I don't know, I couldn't look at the carries in front of me, but he got this season 2/3 worth of a season of carries there, not a ton. He had a good bulk of carries in 2019. But then last year, they obviously, and an injury helped. I mean, helped to hurt, whatever way you want to frame it. It gave him less a burden. And I think this year they'll continue to use Kareem Hunt plenty because they should. Like, I would view Nick Chubb as a 7-year investment in that player because I think he's really special. And I think he does things really good backs can't do. Even his teammate, who Kareem, I think, is one of the NFL's best backs, Pro Football Focus even ranked him the 10th best back in the NFL, which, those are smart people. So he's really good, but you can see the differences between the two. And Nick he's special in that regard. And I don't know if he's another guy who, I don't think Nick should reset the market because he doesn't bring what, say, Christian McCaffrey brings as a receiver. And maybe that's just sheer opportunity. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to bag on Nick as a receiver. I think he's fine, but I also don't think you want to put Nick out wide and have him running a bunch of different routes. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So he doesn't bring that element, but as far as a pure runner, I put him up against anybody. And if you view him as this 7-year investment, the first 4 years, and then you give him a 2 years plus an extra that you can decide on or he can decide on whatever, then I think it makes a ton of sense, especially relieving the burden a little bit by having Kareem there, having Kareem do his thing to help out. And I think you're going to get the best version of that player. So by mixture of sheer, Nick's not a guy who's going to demand a ton of money. He's not going to say, I don't think Nick's going to hold. I would just be stunned. Maybe he will. I mean, the way he sort of casually answered, yeah, I let my agent deal with that, man. I don't even know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Just makes me think like, if his agent says, hey man, I need you to hold out, he's going to laugh him out of the room. Like, I just don't see that being a thing. So I think he's obviously going to want his money because he knows he only gets one football life here. But I just think the Browns and Nick will find some sort of way to make it work that makes sense for both sides. And I continue to say this: none of these teams have let an elite running back go. Everybody talks about it. Like, you could let him go, let the running back go, turn it over. Cool. Like, I get it. Some teams do it, but not all teams find really good running backs. And show me an example of a team letting a running back in the peak of his powers walk. Hasn't been done yet. So the Browns are just going to be the first team to do that. Okay, maybe. I get their reputation as forward thinking, trying to be analytical, trying to drive numbers to drive decision making, and I think they do. But I also think they really make some football decisions sometimes too. And I think Nick is just a blatantly obvious football decision that I expect them to make, with smart, sensical market value decisions. There, I don't think they're going to give him crazy money, but I do think they're going to make a smart play on what he's worth and what he's willing to do. And I think you can buy out this last year and make it happen. So I expect to hear a little more on that front in the coming month and a half or so.
Yeah. So Kareem Hunt, this is, at least me personally, I don't know about you, I think Kareem Hunt is kind of the X factor of this offense because of how much he can do. And well, maybe not even how much he can do, but the different roles he can fit into. You know what I mean? In the offense. So just a kind of a hypothetical question, and this is something me personally and my friends just kind of throw out and talk about, because honestly, that's what I love to do here. That's why I have this channel, is I love just talking football. I love it. So this is kind of one of those random questions. Would you almost rather the Browns keep Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb together? You know, you talked about a 7-year future with Nick Chubb. Would you almost rather the Browns keep the two of them together and then go ahead and draft one of these receivers that keep coming out every year? The receiving room is really talented as far as the draft goes in the first round, and keep those two together? Or would you rather, let's say hypothetically, OBJ has a really good season that we haven't had him or haven't seen from him yet? Would you rather keep the two running backs together and go ahead and just go young at the receiver position? Or would you rather keep one of these older receivers, an OBJ or Jarvis, and then go ahead and kind of reload at the running back position?
I honestly don't know that you can view those together. I think if they give Nick a contract, Kareem's current contract will run out. He'll get a new deal somewhere else. I just don't think they can keep both of those guys under contract with, especially what Nick is given to make. I think there's a big emphasis on why they drafted Demetric Felton there, because Felton does a lot of similar things to what Kareem is good at. And I think that there's I mean, if I'm just looking at it from the outside, I see a Nick Chubb extension, and I see Kareem letting him play out his contract, which is very team friendly, and then letting Felton take over, and then maybe drafting another late round back along the way. Because if you're going to pay a premier running back, you have to pay everybody else in that position cheap. And as nice as it is to envision Kareem as the second player at 5-6 million, it's like you're going to get maybe 15, 16, 17 in the 15 to 20 range snap count. And maybe not even that. Like, and how many touches is he going to get? Are those touches worth that money? I mean, I know Kareem's a good player, but I just don't think the Browns will view it that way. So if they do sign Nick, it tells me Kareem will be done in his current capacity. And Kareem's going to get a contract from somebody. He's still got a lot left. We all know he missed a year for his own mistakes and stuff like that. But the status is a status, and he missed a year of wear and tear, and he hasn't gotten starter level carries. So that wear and tear shouldn't be a huge concern. So he'll get an offer somewhere to play. He'll make his money. He'll do his thing. I just don't see him getting another contract in Cleveland unless we see Cleveland say, hey, we want to go super cheap at running back, and the best way to go super cheap at running back. And that's something I should mention too. And I probably do a poor job of talking about this when I talk about Nick. All these other teams who made these decisions, Panthers with McCaffrey, the Titans with Derrick Henry, Zeke in Dallas, Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, none of them had a running back behind him like Kareem Hunt. And if the Browns really wanted to go cheap and they wanted to skimp at running back to produce better contracts everywhere else for better players, which is not the worst idea in the world, you could still have Kareem Hunt for cheap. So that's another angle that probably deserves a little bit of conversation too. So, but my prediction is they bring Nick back, they let Kareem walk, and then they continue to evolve that wide receiver room. They churn it over. They bring in a first or second round wide receiver this year that will obviously be on the younger side. We know they tend to draft 21 or younger. So, the Ohio State kids are obviously of real severe interest in many
don't
others.
Get me excited. Don't get me excited on them too.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's kind of just my loose prediction. I don't think you see both of Jarvis and Odell back next year. I just don't know how they can afford to dump $30 million more into the wide receiver room again.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of questions there. And again, Jake Burns 18 on Twitter. Find him at the OBR. One quick last question, if you don't mind, before we go ahead and wrap up. And again, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate this.
My pleasure.
So with the defense, and I know we didn't talk a whole lot about the defense, but with there being so many new young guys with Greg Newsome and Delpit coming back, and new additions, do you think when it comes to the secondary, do you think they're going to run more of the three corners with Troy Hill and the nickel, or do you think they're going to run more with three safeties earlier on in the year, given the experience levels of each of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it comes down to how healthy Grant Delpit is. If he's well enough to play right off the bat, they'll play those three guys. I see situations, honestly, man, where they play three safeties and three corners, and they play one or two linebackers and three down it. It just is so much. They have so much flexibility, which is a really beautiful thing. That if they play a team with a ridiculously fast slot, they have Troy Hill to chase him around. If they play a team with a bigger guy, they like to put in the slot, or a tight end they like to put in the slot. Think like, maybe the teams that put, Gronk in the slot, or teams that put Eric Ebron in the slot, like Pittsburgh. You have a safety who you feel comfortable matching up there. If they play a team that wants to play a ton of 12, 13 personnel, they can play linebackers there. They have so much flexibility now, and I still would love them to go get one more corner. Don't think it's going to happen, but I would love it. But between the two outside guys opposite of Denzel, between Greedy and Newsome, and you have Denzel, you have three corners you feel good about, a fourth corner in Troy Hill you feel good about in the slot, with Greedy, Greg, and Denzel with the ability to flex into the slot too if they want them to. That should be noted. We always talk about how MJ Stewart's a snap away from playing. I don't think they're going to quite let that happen, but they have the flex there. But yeah, I mean, if they want to play three safeties because, this week they have bigger bodies and we don't really want to put ourselves in a disadvantageous run game situation, then yeah, they certainly have the ability to do that now. So that's the thing. I think Joe Woods talked about they were 10 snaps and dime personnel last year is all they were able to play. And he said he's even more of a nickel guy than a dime guy. So there's flexibility there, but then that's not even to mention JOK, who I think I've clearly demonstrated in his write-up how effective he can be covering in the slot when he needs to be. He's very fluid, and I view him as another safety type player at that role. There's just a ton of flexibility they didn't have last year. Safety variations they can do, corner variations, linebacker mixes. Man, I think it has the potential to really be like we watch it early in the year and we're like, oh, this is nothing like we've seen in the last few years. And the potential to be one of the best Browns defenses, granted they stay healthy, one of the better Browns defenses we've seen since they returned in 99. Just because I'm not here to say they're a top 5 defense or go crazy, but they've had really bad defenses for so long that I think people just misunderstand the level of flexibility your defense needs to have in modern football to match up week to week with 31 other teams who do things so many different ways. They've been so they've been so short-handed at that for a while now. And I think that the signings in the secondary, the additions of Walker, Jacob Phillips coming into year 2, and JOK at the linebacker position, and then you bring in some additions to the defensive line, I think have a chance to really help too. Needless to say there. So, I as good as we saw a turnaround for the offense, we thought from 2019 to 2020, it could be an even more severe turnaround defensively, which is a little bit jarring to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know they often say the theme is work, but it almost seems like the theme is really versatility. If you're looking at the big picture, especially defensively, every room, it seems like there's nothing but versatility, and it's going to be an exciting one to watch. So thank you guys again for watching. Like I said, Jake_Burns18 on Twitter. Go check him out at the OBR or Orange and Brown Report YouTube channel. All that's going to be in the description. You guys know how I do that. So there's no excuses to go check them out. Did I miss anything there?
No, nailed it. Again, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So everybody go check him out. Thank you guys for watching so much. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? We're open to discussion. So let us know. And thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.